Hey guys, David with First Place Auto Parts out in the shop today. Thanks for joining me. I'm just out here measuring up the LS in my son's 2013 GMC truck to see what it's going to take to pull this thing out and put it in my 87 C10 before he gets home from work. Now the LS platform has been around ever since the 1997 C5 Corvette. This thing has been around for 24 years. It's proven itself to be reliable, powerful, and right now it is very plentiful. You can find these engines everywhere. Whether it's from a running vehicle, don't tell my son, or from a wrecking yard, you can find an LS engine to suit your needs. It's become a very popular upgrade or engine swap option, and it has tons of support from the automotive aftermarket to make that engine work in older vehicles. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the family of LS engine platforms and the various generations that makes them different. Look, a lot has changed in 24 years. There's a lot of options when it comes to LS engines, whether it was for cars or trucks. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the car LS engine versions. Be sure to catch our second video on this series where we look at the truck engines. Look, there's a ton of them available in your local wrecking yard, and there's some things you should know before laying down your hard-earned cash on your LS engine. So let's go ahead and get started and get to know LS engines a little bit better. Hey guys, if you like today's video, please consider subscribing to the First Place Auto Parts YouTube channel. We're going to continually be adding new videos every week where we show you how to put new parts on, we take a look at the latest parts that are available, and we go to some pretty cool car guy stuff I'm pretty sure you're going to want to see. In 1997, General Motors unleashed the all-new C5 Corvette, and what they also unleashed at the same time was what they called the Gen 3 small block. We now know it as the LS1. It was a 5.7 liter all aluminum constructed motor that had a lot of innovative features that the earlier small blocks did not have. For example, it was fully fuel injected, had coilover plugs, and had a lot of engine management things that made it a far better powertrain for the Corvette than any previous small block Chevy. Shortly after that, GM started to produce some iron blocked version of the LS3 or Gen 3 motor that went into the Chevrolet or GM trucks and also SUVs. There's so many different variants of the aluminum block and cast iron block that we're going to split this series up into two. Today we're going to talk about the car LS engines, which are primarily the aluminum block versions, so be sure to catch our second video in this series that covers the truck engines. Now when it comes to the LS1, there's a couple of caveats that you should be aware of before you buy one, especially when it came out of a 97 to 2004 Corvette, because those were throttle-by-wire cars. What they had was a very specific program and wiring that worked with that throttle-by-wire, so when you get one of those earlier engines, be sure to also grab the TAC or the TAC module as well as the original throttle assembly, the throttle pedal that's mounted on the floor. All that stuff has to work together with the PCM that you're going to use. The automotive aftermarket has most of this figured out, but if you're buying an engine out of a car that's complete, make sure that you get those components with the LS1 engine when you grab it. And the second item to be aware of with any LS engine, especially any GM fuel-injected engine built after 1989, is that GM used a vehicle anti-theft device called a VATs that was chipped to your key. Traditionally what that meant is if you were transplanting a vehicle from 1989 to later, you had to get the steering column and the decoder module. Now, the automotive aftermarket has come a long way since then, has made it much easier to transplant a GM fuel-injected motor into a non-fuel injected type chassis, say a 69 Camaro or a square body truck. But just know that these GM powertrains, these fuel-injected powertrains are going to have VAT systems, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to work with and address. The LS1 engine, as it came in the 97 Corvette, was rated at 345 horsepower, and I can tell you from experience it was a sweet driving powertrain. Look, this thing was docile in traffic, had air conditioning. My automatic version of the 98 Corvette got 30 miles to the gallon on the interstate, but when you punch the loud pedal, the thing would scream. After the Gen 3 LS1 comes the Gen 4, and this includes the LS2, the LS3, and the LS4 engine. Now, this is kind of interesting. This is when cylinder deactivation came about, and there's a lot of complicated parts that go into that process. Cylinder deactivation was meant to improve fuel mileage, and essentially it kills 4 of the cylinders under light throttle loads. It had a fairly complicated lifter that could, and typically did, fail after a certain amount of time, no rhyme or reason. Good news is, again, the automotive aftermarket has come out with a delete kit in that, and to be truthful, I didn't find that much fuel economy improvement when that thing was activated. So that's something that can be addressed. The second really cool thing about the Gen 4 version of the engine is we got a bigger displacement engine that was available to us, which not only bumped up horsepower, but also torque. All the changes and tweaks that went into the Gen 4 LS version of the engine made it a world-class powertrain. Look, the Gen 4 includes the LS2, 3, and 4 engine, but it also includes the supercharged LS9 and the road course version, which was a dry sump engine LS7. Look, that family tree is huge. There's a ton of them out there, and man, are they strong. Rated at 400 horsepower and first available in the 2005 Corvette, the LS2 benefited from a 90mm throttle body and a redesigned intake manifold. GM continued to tweak the Gen 4 small block when they released the LS3 version of the engine in 2008, first released in the Corvette. Improvements included offset rocker arms, a freer flowing intake manifold, a slightly stronger block than the LS2. The LS3 benefited from some traditional hot rodders tricks, which included a hotter camshaft and better flowing cylinder heads. The LS3, to make its 430 horsepower, had the highly touted and desirable L98 cylinder heads and had the camshaft that was originally installed in the 2001 LS6 version of the LS3. So this thing was actually modified to another level. Again, traditional hot rodding, we do a bigger cam, freer flowing heads and intake. The LS3 had all of those things. And then there's the LS4 engine, and all I can say about this engine is just steer clear of it. It was originally designed to be used or be mounted transversely in a front-wheel drive vehicle. It was used in the Impalas that the police officers used back in the day, and very little of it translates to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. I'm not saying it can't be done, but why would you? It's just going to be more expensive, perhaps for less of a result. All the GM LS motors that have been mentioned so far are readily available in wrecking yards or someone parting out a late model vehicle. Maybe it was destroyed in an accident, but the drivetrain is still good. The next set of LS engines we're going to talk about are the GM factory high performance versions. Going to be a little bit harder to find in the wrecking yard or secondhand, and certainly going to be more expensive. And the first of the high-performance hot rod engines from General Motors is the LS6 version of the engine, available in the first-gen C5 Corvettes in the Z06. Released in 2001, the first LS6 produced 385 horsepower, which was a 35 horsepower bump over the base engine in the Corvette. This motor was later modified with better flowing heads and hotter camshaft, more compression ratio, and ultimately produced 405 horsepower. And the next high-performance engine, and this one actually replaced the LS6 engine in the Corvette Z06, is the LS7. This LS7 was a normally aspirated and made over 500 horsepower. It was hand-built in Wixom, Michigan at their GM plant in a special area and had steel-forged crankshaft, titanium connecting rods, hyper-eutectic pistons, and it was oiled by a dry sump oil system, which not only saves horsepower, it makes sure that oil is kept in all the places where it's supposed to be when you're employing high G's in a turn. Look, there's no finer normally aspirated engine, and if you ever find one of these things at a reasonable price laying on the side of the road, please let me know because I want to make sure I pick it up. And the pinnacle of Generation 4 LS engine performance is none other than the LS9, which is supercharged from the factory. It makes over 600 horsepower and it'll go 100,000 miles. Look, you're not likely to find one of these things secondhand or from a junkyard. I'm not saying it can't be done, but you're not likely to find one of these things. The good news is all you have to do with $24,000 in your pocket is walk into your favorite GM dealer and order one right over the counter. If you've ever ridden in one of these things, all I can tell you is this is a violent engine. This thing makes tons of power and it makes tons of torque. If you ever ride in one, you'll be hooked and be looking at what you can sell, what kidney, what arm you can sell to be able to afford one of these engines. Here's the bottom line. The Gen 3 and Gen 4 LS engine platforms are like that perfect bowl of porridge that we learned about in Goldilocks. It doesn't matter if you have a cheeseburger budget or a filet mignon type budget, there's an LS engine for you. They're robust, their packaging makes them fit between a ton of different vehicles' frame rails, and they make a ton of power. The only thing you have to do is make sure that you get the right one for your application. Hey guys, I really appreciate you watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to the First Place Auto Parts YouTube channel so you don't miss part 2 of this series where we take a look at the LS engines that came in trucks. These are cast iron blocked engines, but they are probably more plentiful than the car engines, and you're probably about to trip over them when you go to a wrecking yard. So let's find out more about these engines and their applications so that when you're planning your project, you get the right one. Guys, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep the hammer down. Keep it between the guardrails.